Hi guys, just some things I want to go over for week 1 to help aid you with this week's material and to set you up for the course in general. So just a few things. I can tell you that by nature of this being an online class, there are some things that I will not be able to do. So we're going to keep this class pretty simple, pretty basic, and if you want more instruction, please seek out a live yoga teacher who can watch what you're doing and keep you safe. But we're going to keep things very basic so that when you walk into a class or turn on a video on YouTube or however you may be practicing, that you do so safely and you do so in a manner in which you kind of understand what's going on. Every school of yoga is a little bit different, so I'm going to keep my instruction as general as possible. But I am familiar with several schools of yoga. I've been practicing almost 20 years, and I have friends in all sorts of schools, all sorts of yoga teachers, so we'll talk more about that as we go along. Your textbook looks like this. It's Hatha Yoga Illustrated. It is available in hardback as well as available as a in Kindle version as well as other e-reader versions. I don't care which one you have, just pick one that works better for you. I picked it because the pictures are really crisp in here and gives you step-by-step instructions, one of the better instructions that I've seen. Also, it has sample classes in the back so that this may be something that you decide you want to hold on to and keep the sample segments in the back. Also, it's relatively cheap. Like if you buy it brand new off the bookshelf, it's $14.95, and you can get it way less than that used or as an e-reader. So keep that in mind. So before we dive into this week's practice, I want to give you a little bit of background with some of our lecture topics. First, let me define what yoga is. Yoga, in its Sanskrit form, means union. Many years ago when I was in college and I first was beginning the practice, my yoga teacher defined yoga as any process that makes you a better version of you. So it could be the joining of opposites or going through the process of learning something new by nature of you being a student. There are lots of things that can be yoga that don't include you rolling out a yoga mat. So keep that in mind as we go along, and as you do some of your journaling. There's lots of things that can be yoga. Yoga is union, and yoga is also a process of growth. When we talk about yoga, what we commonly will come across is the idea of Hatha yoga, which is of course the name of your textbook and the most predominant form of yoga practiced in the United States. There are 3 components to Hatha yoga, which is the physical form of the practice. First is the yoga asana or poses. The second is the breathing exercises or pranayama. And the third is meditation or deep thought or reflection. We will be covering all 3 during our course. However, the emphasis will be on the asanas or the poses, but we will cover all 3. Those are the components of a Hatha yoga class. There are 2 types of energy when we talk about poses. So in the pose itself, they'll either require that you gain more strength or you gain more flexibility. And if you think about the way your body works, you probably naturally have more of one than the other. So if you tend to be a little stiffer, it usually means you tend to be a little bit stronger. The stronger poses will come easier for you. If you have a great amount of flexibility, maybe you have a dance or gymnastics background, or you're just blessed with good genetics, then the stretchier poses will be easier for you. But remember, the point of yoga is union. So the idea is not to end up on either side of the spectrum, strong or flexible. The idea is to unite the 2 where they meet. So if you're really strong, the idea is to find more movement. If you're really flexible, the idea is to find more stability, more strength. And so with that said, in every yoga pose, there's 2 types of energy. There is stabilizing energy that will require that your muscles contract and will keep you safe. It's the energy that will make you less likely to fall. There's also expanding energy, which is the stretching energy. It's the energy that makes you longer. It's the energy that when you feel contracted or you feel like you can't breathe or you just feel kind of mushed in a pose, that's the energy that gives you a little bit of space so that you can expand. So we'll play with that in our weekly practice a little bit as we also talk about placement. So you want stabilizing energy as well as expanding energy. The last thing I want to cover today is the idea of philosophy. Not all yoga philosophy is the same. So if you take a philosophy course or read something online or even pick up a book and you're like, that these things say completely different things, they do. Yoga philosophy, like American philosophy and British philosophy, and even the great philosophers of Plato and Socrates, etc., changed over time. So it's not all the same thing. So if you pick up something written in one era, it's not necessarily the same as something picked up another era. So yoga experts, particularly historians, will argue that there are up to 5 different types of philosophies, all of which have subheadings underneath them. But your book mentions 3, so those are the 3 I want to focus on. The first one is known as classical yoga. Classical yoga would be the oldest of all the philosophical forms. It's kind of, the original, the OG, so to speak. Classical yoga, to take a very broad way of thinking and condense it down to one sentence so that's understandable, is that the idea of classical yoga is to take the union of mind and body and to separate them. So that if you were in a class with a classical yoga teacher, you would hear words like, you are not your body, or your thought process is greater than your discomfort, or something like that. Something to kind of like separate the idea of mind and body. So the idea is that the union breaks apart. The second type of philosophy is called Advaita Vedanta. That is spelled for you in your textbook, so I don't have to spell it for you. But basically with Advaita Vedanta, it means to separate from the Vedas. And the Vedas are a group of texts that are still studied today in India that kind of go through kind of ritual and instruction and a little bit of philosophy as well. So Advaita Vedanta was pretty much around that time period is around the Middle Ages period. And this idea, again, to take a broad philosophy system that's still studied and practiced today and condense it down to a sentence, is that the world is not real. So everything is a dream. It's kind of like that Leonardo DiCaprio movie, Inception, except the idea is to wake up. Like the point of your practice is to wake up. So the Advaita Vedantins didn't get too much into the idea of union. They got into the idea of waking up. And if you've taken a comparison religion class, you'll hear similar ideas come out of early stage Buddhism. And these were developed around the same time, around the same part of the world, and they eventually branch off and become their own different things. But you will hear similar ideas come about then. So early Advaita Vedanta and early stage Buddhisms are going to sound very similar until they each truly develop into their own thing. The last philosophical system I want to talk about is Tantra. Tantra is the youngest of all the systems, and I kind of misspoke. I said Advaita Vedanta developed around the Middle Ages. That was incorrect. It developed earlier, around the time of early Buddhism. Tantra developed around the Middle Ages. And Tantra goes back to the idea of union. The word tan in Tantra actually means to kind of weave together. So if you were to take a big medieval loom where they would make the rugs and weave things into each other, that's what Tantra means. So Tantra by nature would take the ideas of classical and the ideas of Advaita Vedanta and weave them into their own system so that you have this beautiful tapestry or rug of many different thoughts. The Tantrikas would also say the world, is actually very real, and the point of your practice isn't to separate or to wake up, it's to figure out what things mean. And goodness knows that that's not always an easy task. None of these are easy tasks, but that's kind of the idea. So again, if you hear someone talk or pick up a text, or you walk into someone's yoga class or you turn on a YouTube clip, I want you to kind of know that there could be these different areas where people are coming from, these different trains of thought. One's not better than the other. It's just a matter of which one jives with you, and there's something to learn from each of them. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this week's lecture, and I hope it proves to be a little helpful for you when you come to your mini quiz. I'm going to get ready to prepare to record our practice, and I'll see you in a bit.